about the reality of in the roots of the story of the Maccabees and what we know as Hanukkah, and really drawing out the reality and talking in a sense about this reality of the spirit of anti-Messiah and how it is at work in our society, has been for some time. But I want to really take a look at some of these parallels. Before I go forward, I just want to say that as we're in a moments of time of prayer, we just want to remember, I can't remember all of the states that it occurred last night, but it was Kentucky, Arkansas, Illinois. There was one other state, but that was a series of what is billed to be, I think, anywhere between 18 to 24 tornadoes that were on the ground and caused the loss of life of like 50 people last night. And just a band of storms that was taking place. And so there's a lot of people that have been devastated. Those that didn't lose their life, they lost a lot of, from what I saw from some of the video footage, they lost a lot of their homes and property and other things, because from what I gathered from what was reported and what was taking place, it was pretty bad band of storms. And so, I mean, I've not experienced the devastation of a tornado. I mean, we've had the experience with hurricanes, but one of those tornadoes I was reading was on the ground for about 200 miles and caused a lot of destruction. So, in our time of prayer, let's just remember them and all that is happening that people are going through. It's pretty rough. But Luke chapter 17, and if we want to talk, I still really want to deal with the reality of Yeshua's statement in Matthew chapter 24 when he talks about how this spirit of anti-Messiah, Daniel chapter 9, as we read before, dealing with how this spirit comes and interrupts the pattern that was set by the Father, reestablishes and focuses on attacking, destroying, defaming, defacing anything that is sacred or holy. And so in Luke chapter number 17, and by the way, if you want to really kind of there's a lot you can read, but I think it's concentrated in Genesis chapter 6 and 7, the reality of, the Father's statements concerning mankind at the time of Noah. But Luke chapter 17, verse number 26, says, also, at that time, the Son of Man, so at the time of the Son of Man, it will be just as it was at the time of Noah. People ate and drank, and men and women married right up until the day Noah entered the ark. Then the flood came and destroyed them all. Likewise, as it was in the time of Lot. Interesting, we started having that conversation this morning. As it was in the time of Lot. People ate, drank, bought, and sold, planted, and built. But the day Lot left Sodom, fire and sulfur rained down from heaven and destroyed them all. That is how it will be on the day the Son of Man is revealed. On that day, if someone is on the roof, his belongings in his house, he must not go down to take them away. Similarly, if someone is in the field, he must not turn back. Remember Lot's wife. Whoever aims at preserving his own life will lose it, but whoever loses his life will stay alive. I tell you, on that night, there will be two people in one bed. One will be taken, the other left behind. There will be two women grinding grain together. One will be taken, the other left behind. They asked him, where? He answered, wherever there is a dead body, that's where the vultures gather. So just in there's a lot, to take away from that, but just the basis of the reality of what he's saying. And maybe we do need to go to Genesis chapter 6. I won't read the whole thing. But the reality is that mankind had gotten to a point at this particular point in time in history where every imagination, every thought, it seemed, was wickedness. The heart, the intention behind everything was no respect, no regard for anything that was of good. As a matter of fact, you can almost say that good was kind of, as it is now, seen as evil. That certain things that are an offense to the Father is like a badge of honor. What an interesting time we live in. But in Genesis chapter 6, let's look at what he said. I want to look at verse number 5. Adonai saw the people on the earth were very wicked, that all the imaginings of their heart were always of evil only. Adonai regretted that he had made humankind on the earth. It grieved his heart. He said, I will wipe out humankind whom I have created from the whole earth, and not only human beings, but animals, creeping things, and birds in the air, for I regret that I ever made them. But Noah found grace in the sight of Adonai. And then it goes, of course, here's the history of Noah, and begins to go into those different things. But in that verse number 5, it talks about where the heart of the Father was concerning the wickedness that was in the heart of man, and how that when they came up with the things they came up with, it is if they were looking for ways to be displeasing to him. I can't help when I read that but to really consider the time that we're in now. That really does seem like the reality. I remember we had a particular streaming service at one time, and we wanted to use sort of the streaming service because we wanted to be able to control what we saw, especially the children were small. We wanted to kind of control what we saw and what we didn't see, because we're not like that big on TV anyway. And we kind of felt pretty good about being able to control and being able to put the settings and being able to say this won't be seen and that won't be seen. And then the funny thing happened. The streaming service, when you would turn it on, they started doing like advertisements for different movies and films or whatever that started to come on. And it was all of a sudden, although you would have those controls, it's like it didn't apply to those advertisements that would come on. And it almost seemed like the scenes that they would pick out of all of the advertisements of the movies and the films that they picked would be the most grotesque scenes. And it was like all of a sudden you really couldn't control what was coming across that. screen. And I said, you know, we just have to cancel this streaming service because and if you track history, there was a point in time where there were certain things, of course, that were happening in society, but they weren't like publicly displayed in that manner and celebrated. And you know, you couldn't win an award for certain types of lewd behavior. Now it is almost as if that is a contractual expectation that you have to, you know, use certain types of words, or if there's going to be a movie, there has to be some pornographic, and that's really what it is. There has to be some pornographic or some pornographically suggested scenes that take place in the course of these movies, of course of these films. And I felt something, some sort of way, when that was kind of the advent of the popularity of virtual reality goggles. Because I started to realize, you know, the way people would respond when they put those on, and then, you know, there was kind of some talk about gifting, and I was like, I don't want any of that. I don't want any of that, because this thing is moving in a direction that's going to start to really alter the minds of people in their reality, and work in a manner that the adversary does. Because I'm going to show you in a minute that his approach and his pattern is no different than it was from the very beginning. The very first conversation that was between the serpent and Hava in the garden is really the same tactic. He really used the same tactic. It's a conversation that changes the perspective. I want you to think about this for a moment. In the conversation, she said to him, we're not supposed to eat, I'm paraphrasing, we're not supposed to eat from this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. In other words, she communicated to him that eating from this tree was not good. But by the time it came to the point where there was this exchange where now Adama was getting ready to partake, the text says that she saw it was good for food. Like, how did you change your perspective? It was this conversation, right? By the time she got ready, it was ready to present to him, she saw her perspective had changed, that this was good. And Most High said, no, this is not what you're supposed to do. But all of a sudden, here is what she's doing, or here's what's taking place. And now, through that conversation, the perspective changed, where there was sort of an exchange for being made in the image and likeness of the Most High to just knowledge. Now it's kind of changed. Now we just changing for knowing. And the stuff that began to take place, like I talked about one time, isn't it amazing that the man and the woman were fully naked, but whenever they were in the place of disobedience, the only thing they could think to create was a fig leaf apron. Like, does that really even cover the fullness of your nakedness? And here's the funny thing. The funny thing is, you start to realize that without his wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, man is in that dilemma where he always creates something that is insufficient, that doesn't fully cover his nakedness. Like religion and tradition to me. It doesn't fully cover, it doesn't fully address the nakedness. And so this pattern that was established, as we talked about, Yeshua coming in the pattern that was established by the Father. We had the video up here, or the PowerPoint up here. It had the lampstand, the menorah, and this pattern that was set when he came the first time, and he fulfills the reality of the pattern of the spring feast. And then we know that his second coming, he's going to fulfill the pattern that has been established in the fall feast. And so we see that the spirit of anti-Messiah comes in, and his goal is to interrupt, to intercept, to change, alter the pattern, and then insert his own. And so when you start to see how these behaviors work, and we saw it in the story of the Maccabees with Antiochus Epiphanes, and he comes in and know what he does in the temple and desecrates it, and even sacrifices unclean animals on the altar. And this pattern is interrupted, this pattern of worship that is established. One of these times I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the teaching on the tabernacle and the tent and all the furnishings and the pattern of what they mean and what they establish. I'll go back and do that. But he comes in and desecrates that and changes and alters, and then requires the people to alter their belief system that had been given to them by the Father. By law, requires it. You know, I don't know how you can be a Bible scriptural student of the scriptures and not be able to see the absolute parallel of this wicked pattern that has been presented by the adversary. Don't know how that can be, but it's definitely there. The altered pattern is idolatry. It's you know, as we've said, the worship of man, really man worshiping himself, redirecting that, creating different things, different ways, worship of themselves. I started thinking, why when you present a message that says something about this Yuletide season, this Christmas holiday that, you know, people have such an affinity for, and I say this pattern of holidays that people have an affinity for, whenever there's a presentation that is made that challenges the notion to understand that the reality of the origins of what is taking place, everything about it is worshiping something else and someone else beside the Most High. Yet we say we're doing it to honor and to celebrate his birthday. One of my friends made a post, a friend from Atlanta, he made a post on Facebook. He said, if truly our presentation of our gifts is for the celebration and the honoring of the birth of our Messiah, then why don't we take all the gifts that we buy and lay them at the manger? I mean, that's what the wise men did. They brought their gifts and they laid them before him at the manger. I mean, so are we going to go and fight in the lines in Walmart? All the stuff we do, and then take those gifts, those precious gifts that we had, are we going to lay them before the Messiah? But think about it. Provoke the thought. When you do take those gifts, you do lay them before an idol. You do lay them before a tree, right? They have the similitude of an offering that is being presented, a celebration that is being presented. Why do you really, the sense of the notion of what we know, and I'm not attacking people, but this has to be communicated. The notion of what we call holiday, really is one word as you present it, but really it was two words. It is a holy day. When you look at the garment of the priest, the garment, one of the things that the priest wore was a headpiece, a turban, and there was a band on the front of that turban. And the band on the front of that turban said, "Holiness unto Yahuwah," or "Holiness unto the Most High." So when we're talking about the focus and emphasis, when you read the study about the garment, it was for beauty, and for the office, that he had to kind of operate in. If you really pay attention to it, it was kind of made on the similitude, using some of the same pattern and fabric that was the veil was made out of. Actually, when the high priest was operating and what he was operating in, he sort of blended into his surroundings where there was no focus and emphasis even on him. He had a responsibility and office to fulfill, but there was no attention, there was no focus even upon him as the high priest. That was not what the emphasis was. The emphasis always was the Most High. The pattern always led to outer court, inner court, saying holy of holies. It always led to, this was the center, the heart of the whole situation. Him. So if my presentation and my goal is to honor him, then why not just give him what it is that he asks of me? I mean, I'm honoring him. I mean, you're celebrating his birthday, which does not fall on December 25th. Somebody's birthday falls on December 25th. Some celebration falls on December 25th. It's not the birth of Messiah. Yeah, it's directed, connected to the birth of a messianic type figure that is in the spirit of, in the heart of anti-Messiah. Because remember, anti-Messiah, anti-Christ is not just about being against him. It's about being against him, but then also replacing him. Because when you study it out, it indicates a substitute, that he's going to be a substitute. So, in our, who are we? In the origins of our behaviors and the things that we adopt, what are we? Who are we worshiping? If we are worshiping according to a pattern that is outside of a pattern that was set by the Most High, who or what are we worshiping? It can't be him. It can't be him. Because if he spells out for me and tells me this is exactly how I intend to be worshipped, this is exactly what I want from you, this is exactly what I expect, my expectation, what I want from you to do, and then you tell him, nah, let me give you what I think, is good for you to have. And then we want him to accept it. But y'all, we have all different kinds of examples. One of the best examples we have is, you remember the fellows who went into the temple who tried to offer strange fire? And when they tried to offer that strange fire, guess what? That was the end of the whole situation. Why? I mean, do you think that he's okay with any type of offering, anything that we offer and give to him? Absolutely not. So it behooves us to really pay attention to the origins, to the pattern. Like, if what we are doing is outside of the pattern that he has established, it's something we need to throw away. It's something we need to quickly divorce ourselves from. Let's take a look. Daniel chapter 11. Let's look at Daniel chapter 11. It's funny. We are, 'tis the season to be jolly. I'm not even going to tell you, but I just challenge any of you who may be watching this at the moment, do your own research and just look up something called Yuletide. Just look up at that and look at it and see what it really means. Because again, sometimes we participate in things, and it's like we don't even think about it. It's just all we like is all we think about is the warm fuzzies that we feel in our hearts. And somehow we feel like that because we feel good about it, that it's a good thing. When in reality, that's not how we determine what is good. Do you understand? Well, there's just so much to talk about. In one teaching one time, I talked about the reality that because we are not good, right? Yeshua says none is good but the Father. Because we are not good, we are really not qualified to determine or define what is good. And if none is good but the Father, that means that what we deem as good has to be something that He is identified as good. And when we identify what He is identified as good, then that's what we embrace as the reality of what is good. Because sometimes our determination of what is good for us, and it's not necessarily what is truly good. And the truth of the matter, to determine what is good is not based on what feels good. Because there are things that feel good that are not good. So we have to understand that whatever He has established, it all goes back to that which He has established, that we have to settle in our hearts. This is what He wants. So if this is what He wants, that's what I'm giving Him. That's His expectation from Him. Daniel chapter 11, look at verse 21. There will arise in his place a despicable man, not entitled to inherit the majesty of the kingdom, but he will come without warning and gain the kingdom by intrigue. Large armies will be broken and swept away before him, as well as the prince of the covenant. Alliances will be made with him, but he will undermine them by deceit. Then, although he will have but a small following, he will emerge and become strong. Without warning, he will assail to the most powerful men in each province and do things his predecessors never did, either recently nor in the distant past. He will reward them with plunder, spoil, and wealth while devising plots against their strongholds, but only for a time. He will summon his power and courage against the king of the south with a great army, and the king of the south will fight back with a very large and powerful army, but he will not succeed because of the plots devised against him. Yes, those who shared his food will destroy him. His army will be swept away, and many will fall in the slaughter. These two kings, bent on mischief, will sit at the same table speaking lies to each other, but none of this will succeed because the appointed end will not have come yet. The king of the north will return to his own land with great wealth, and his heart set against the holy covenant. He will take action and then return home. At the time designated, he will come back to the south, but this time things will turn out differently than before because ships from Kittim will come against him so that his courage will fail him. Then in retreat, he will take furious action against the Holy Covenant. Thank you for reading it. So. Again, showing favor to those who abandon the Holy Covenant. Armed forces will come at his order and profane the sanctuary and fortress. They will abolish the daily burnt offering and set up the abomination that causes desolation. And that's something. Now, from what we understand, let me finish this. Those who act wickedly against the covenant, he will corrupt by his blandishments. But the people who know the Most High, their Elohim, will stand firm and prevail. Those among the people who have discernment will cause the rest of the people to understand what is happening. Nevertheless, for a while they will fall victim to sword, fire, exile, pillage. When they stumble, they will reveal a little help, although many who join them will be insincere. Even some of those with discernment will stumble, so that some of them will be refined, purified, and cleansed for an end yet to come at the designated time. Here's a funny thing. Funny thing is, a lot of times when you're looking at, Bible prophecy, sometimes it has kind of a manifold or dual reality. Now we understand Antiochus Epiphanes, he comes, I even call him Epiphanes, but Antiochus, he comes in the same fashion and form and does as this spells out, Daniel spells out that he's actually going to do, operating in that spirit of anti-Messiah, antichrist. Now here's the thing. We see in Matthew 24, after, of course, Antiochus has already come, right? That's already in the history of Israel. Antiochus has already come. He's operating this similitude, done the same as Daniel had prophesied. But Yeshua, Matthew 24, is speaking to this group of people after what Antiochus did, and says, when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, right? Look up, for your redemption draws nigh. What is he telling them? Is he telling them to look back at Antiochus? Or is he making them aware that the same pattern that this fella followed, the same pattern that the spirit of the anti-Messiah, spirit of Antichrist has followed, is something that we're seeking? I'm paying attention. I'm looking at some things, and the other day, during the celebration of Hanukkah, that was a Hanukkah celebration at the White House. And in the Hanukkah celebration at the White House, there was a lighting of a menorah, and there was some speeches that were made. You can look up a video on YouTube. There were speeches that was made. And in the speeches, they kind of compared the plans that were set forth, and they kind of made a tie-in with the United States and building back, and kind of associated that with the rebuilding of the third temple. The president did, and was positive and expectant and joyful even at the notion of a rebuilding of a third temple. If you get an opportunity, I encourage you to go and look up something called the Temple Institute online. This is directly connected there in Israel. And one of the things you'll find when you read through the articles, you'll find that all of the furnishings for the temple have already been completed. The fashioning, the development of the garment of the priest, it's already been completed. There's small scale models of what the plans are for the rebuilding of this temple. And as we move through this time of Hanukkah, the notion, the thought, some videos I watched, the notion and thought of the people, especially out of what we know as Orthodox Judaism, says to them that once this temple is rebuilt, it will hasten the return of HaMashiach. This is the statement. This is, in the belief system, and even just the people in the streets they were interviewing, they were saying, you tell us about, how you feel about the rebuilding of the third temple. And this is the statement that is made consistently. This will hasten the return or the coming of HaMashiach. Now, you do understand that Orthodox Judaism does not accept or embrace or believe that Yeshua is Messiah. They believe Messiah has not yet come. and that he is coming. Now they're right in one sense and wrong in the other. Because the Messiah, the Mashiach, and then I watched a video of an Orthodox rabbi giving description of the reality and the nature of what Hamashiach, or who Hamashiach would be, the characteristics that Hamashiach would display. And it was so unbelievable that he was giving a description of Yeshua without understanding that that's exactly who he is, while at the same time saying this is not the guy. But there were some things that was what he brought out about who Mashiach would be, what Mashiach would be, how he would be, that makes a very clear indication with discernment, very clear indication that the Hamashiach, that the Messiah that they are awaiting and anticipating, that they're waiting to establish and build this third temple for him to come into, is not Yeshua. That when that fella shows up on the scene, that fella is every bit in every sense of the anti-Messiah. And there's so many different things that was spelled out. The rebirth of the Sanhedrin, who would be responsible for the coronation, and this was basically your Supreme Court, your legal system, Sanhedrin, that would have established this, that's going to earmark this person, this individual, to be the Messiah, and then will be responsible for him being coronated and brought into this place of honor. And in the spirit of what anti-Messiah is supposed to do, he will not only be against him, but in the minds and the hearts of the people, he will replace him. He will substitute him. Deceptive reality. It's important because every time I talk about this, I feel the need to just bring up the importance of Yeshua's words before he goes in his discourse in Matthew chapter 24. Matter of fact, let's look at it. I want you to see it. I like to bring it up because it's so important. And funny, Matthew 24 begins with Yeshua and his disciples as they're leaving the temple. That's interesting, okay? But let's look, verse number 4. Now let's just start number 1. As Yeshua left the temple and was going away, his Talmudim came and called his attention to its buildings, but he answered them, "You see all these? Yes, I tell you, they will totally be destroyed. Not a single stone will be left standing." Did that come to pass? Did that come to pass? Yeah. When he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the Talmudim came to him privately. "Tell us," they said, "when will these things happen, and what will be the sign that you are coming and the Olam Hazeh is ending?" He says this. Yeshua replied, "Watch out. Don't let anyone fool you. Many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Messiah,' and they will lead many astray. You will hear the noise of wars nearby and the news of wars for all. See to it that you don't become frightened. Such things must happen, but the end is yet to come." 2 specific instructions before he goes deep into his, what I would say, his dissertation, explaining to them the signs of his coming. He says, "Do not let anyone deceive you." It's so important. Do not be afraid. Do not allow yourself to be frightened. Do not allow the spirit of fear to overcome you. It is important because those 2 things would go hand in hand. Fear and deception. I say fear and deception, first cousins. So many things happening, so much stuff going on in the land, so much stuff going on in the country, so much stuff going on from nation to nation, so many things happening. The news of inflation rising more than it has in 39 years, the price of fuel rising at the pump, the notion of more and more and more and more on the news, there's a shortage of this and a shortage of that and a shortage of this and a shortage, a lot of it related to food. The news of all of these things can be disheartening. The reality of the nature of all of these things can strike fear in the hearts of people. How will I provide for my family? People are losing their jobs because companies are closing down. So much is going on, so much is happening. Then you add to that disease and bacteria and germs, and before you can really get to understanding that maybe we're coming to the end. No, we're not coming to the end because there's no barrier. It's just a campaign of fear being given to people. Some of it coming from things that are actually happening. Some of it coming from things that you're being made to believe are happening. But a campaign of fear nonetheless. Why this campaign of fear? Why this campaign of now functioning and operating out of utter fear? And you're putting me in survival mode, in a sense. It's a deceptive reality, right? Because we understand that perception is reality. Whatever you believe in your mind, that's your reality. We have to understand, though, that as we just got through reading here in Daniel chapter 11, it talks about the people that have discernment, the people that know Elohim. That although all these different things was happening, all this fella is going to come, he's going to do this. He says, but there's going to be people who have discernment. And he says, they're going to be strong and they're going to prevail. The truth of the matter is, there are a lot of things that are happening right now, and we have not seen the worst of it. But for me, and I believe anyone who has that connection, that relationship with Messiah, true Messiah, cannot allow our hearts to fear. Cannot allow our hearts to fear so that our minds are susceptible, right? Because if I can present to you and give you a campaign of fear and alter your reality and make you afraid, right? Then I can create a savior for you, right? And bring him along in the similitude of a Marvel hero. I can present to you, this is going to be your answer. This is going to be your solution. I can give you somebody who's going to give you hope. Right? Somebody who's going to restore the things back to the way they should be. You got to really understand, man. Sometimes it's like people, I don't guess people get it, they don't discern. Sometimes when you hear this language that's being communicated and people are talking about the things that they're going to do, but they're going to do it without the Father, they're going to do it without his instructions, they're going to do it without him. What do you think? I keep saying we have to be discerning, right? Remember when the towers fell? That we're gonna build back, and we're gonna build back stronger. We're gonna be better, right? That's what we're talking about now, campaign. We're gonna build back better. It's gonna be stronger. Yeah, but not without him. Not without his instructions. Not without the way he wants things to be done. It won't be better. Do you understand that the scriptures give to us an understanding that this spirit of intimacy operates in a I like the term veil. It's a deception, right? It's not real peace, right? It's not shalom. Because Yeshua makes a comparison when he's talking to his disciples. He says, my shalom, my peace I leave with you, not as the world gives. Right? right? Because that stuff the world gives us a false sense. Because then when they get to the place where they say peace and safety and all is safe and all is well and it's all great and we're doing well, then sudden destruction comes upon them, right? But look at how this works. First, I make you afraid. I make you afraid. I stir up the fear and anxiety in you. I bring you to the point where you're taking Prozac and all these other medications to deal with your anxiety. Have you paid attention to the fact that I've never heard the term anxiety as much as I hear it now? I've never heard it to such a degree. But it's almost like the reality of the day. Why? Because people are being provoked in that emotional sense of the most negative places, the darkest places of their. This is why it's happening. So we have to be discerning. This is why it's taking place. There's spiritual activity. Daniel tells us the reality that one of the things that the spirit of the anti-Messiah does is it's his goal to wear out saints. So stress and fear and anxiety are being provoked by so many different elements that are happening in society. So now when people are at that point, now they go for anything that will make it better. It's setting up for the arrival of the false savior, who's only going to be able to do things for a moment, who's only going to be able to make things look good for a moment, only going to be able to be given power to do false signs and miraculous things and wonders for a moment, for a season. But the whole goal is to get the allegiance. And then once he gets the allegiance, then he's going to turn. Then this is where things get as bad as they've ever been. I'm telling y'all, we have not seen bad. We have not seen terror. We have not seen it yet. This is not as bad as it is going to get. But the Most High is wisdom. So, I know even in the reality of this in this latter time, some people who were born into the same natural family, they'll be tricked into hating one another and betraying one another. So the father's like, hey, it's okay, because I have created a mission. But here's what I understand. I understand that if we have discernment, that if we know who our Elohim is, then we will operate in the similitude of the Maccabees and be able to have the confidence to say, no, it doesn't matter how many people are going to bow the knee to Baal. Doesn't matter how many people are going to compromise and how many people are going to go along to get along. No, and whatever you want to look at it as defilement or whatever you want to look. I don't know if this video is even going to go for whatever you want to look at it as. The heart that the disciples had after Yeshua's resurrection and ascension, and they went back and talk about the fact that they had beat them, that they had put them in prison, and that they commanded them, you're no longer to declare anything in the name of this Mashiach. And they said to them, we would rather obey the Most High than me. I want to submit to you Shaul's words talking about obeying the law of the land is in no way, shape, form, and fashion an indicator that means that we're supposed to be subservient to wicked legislation. It's not supposed to happen. some of the things that we've allowed ourselves to get in bed with, some of the things that we covenanted with, that we've made ourselves get permission to be 501c3, compliant with government entities when it's already been established in the Constitution that you never had to do that anyway, because there's always a separation, because your Constitution, your law says that Congress cannot make a law that impacts what we do. It can't determine what we do. So is that rebellion? No, that's not rebellion. That's absolute understanding that my role and my responsibility is to make sure that my submission is only to Hamashiach. Only to. They ask me, well, how do you think? What do you feel? Well, I do make a pledge of allegiance. You know what it is? Psalm 119. I will hide his word in my heart, that I will not sin against him. It's the only pledge of allegiance I have. In place to anything else, anybody else. This one nation under God, not necessarily mine. That is the reality, y'all. That is the truth. That's not hatred, but it is true. That where do we make the line of delineation? Where do we say, I won't do it. I won't compromise. Friends of mine would have a conversation. We would talk and say, man, what would you do? What do you do if that same-sex couple comes to you and they require for you to do their wedding ceremony? Well, I pick up the phone and I call the police myself and say, come get me. Because I'm not doing this ceremony. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand that this is why you couldn't make yourself subjected to this government entity? Because they gave you the money to build your facility. Now, because they gave you the money to build your facility, now somebody else who does not follow your principles has to have access to it because they're taxpayers, just like you're a taxpayer. And the government can't differentiate because of that. Do you know now you have to give them access, or you could be liable, or you could be sued. Well, what if they never had access to begin with? What if that facility was not established, or that program was not established with anything that had to do with the money you got from the government? See, it's impossible to serve two masters. You serve one, hate the other, right? You can only embrace one master. And I understand there's a lot of people like, wow, you're on a lot of social media platforms saying this. I do. But there comes a point in time where there has to be the notion, as he said to the prophet, lift up your voice like a shofar. Right? Show my people their transgressions, the house of Yaakov, their sins. Because sometimes we don't realize that we covenanted, we got in bed with Babylon. Babylon has become our buddy. Babylon has become our friend. And in some cases, Babylon has become our lover. And we do love the trappings of Babylon more than we actually love the Most High. So we compromise. So we acquiesce. And here's the truth. I'm just going to make this clear. If I am unable to stand for the Most High right now, when things get as bad as they're going to get, there is absolutely no way I will stand for him. Right? The allegiance has to be now. The determination has to be now. Who do you serve? Who do you live for? Kind of feel like what he said to Moshe in Deuteronomy chapter 30. I'm setting this before you this day. Life and death, blessings and curses. Therefore choose life. And you will be seen with it. It's important, man. This is important. See, this is reality. The story, the reality of Hanukkah is not just a story. It's a pattern. It's a reality. It's something that we see that has happened to us, but it speaks to us. Right? There's something to be said. Right? Yeshua is no longer a baby in a manger. He's no longer a baby in a manger. Full-grown man. Sacrificed. Gave of himself. Lived and demonstrated to us how we should walk. How we should live for the Father. How we should live in obedience to Him. That's what He did. But as long as you just see Him as the little cute baby in the manger, do you really see Him as your ruler? Do you really see Him as your Savior? Do you really see Him as your Messiah? It's important. Let me just give you a few things and then we'll relinquish this. But Antiochus was a madman. Spirit of anti-Messiah. These people who operated through history that we know of in history, they were madmen. Chaos man. Chaos, disobedience, disorder, all of those things are akin to one another. Bitterness, all of those are akin to one another. Right? The word bitterness in Hebrew, I believe it talks about chaos man. Okay, that which is defined. Angry, where is the Father? And so these madmen throughout history have functioned in a manner where their madness was real. Now here's the truth. Don't be deceived by a person disguising their madness as charisma. In some cases, that charisma is a trap to bring you in. Charisma, even the term charisma, but anyway. that whole reality. Sometimes I've looked and looked at some of this terminology, I'm like, wow, romance was romance? Anyway. It's a reality that these people were madmen. We know some of them, right? Hitler. Madman. Stalin. Napoleon. And we don't even have to go down the lineage of these kings of England. Right? Some of these crazy people. Madmen. Madmen. We even had some of them as president. Madmen. Craziness. And this is what happens, y'all. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, write that down. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 through 12. I'm not going to read through all of that. But it deals with the reality of lawlessness. And this is what lawlessness is. Guess what lawlessness is? In more of a layman's term, because I was like, okay, well, how do I say it in a layman's term? People can really get the nature of lawlessness. And so what occurred to me the thought was false freedom. This is what lawlessness is. It's false freedom. It is a illusion of freedom. It's really bondage. It's really captivity. It's really the trap. I said this before, that you can take a person and you can put them in prison. They will know they're in prison. They've been, locked down. There's chains, there's bars, all this kind of stuff like that. But you can also have a person in prison the same way that they put animals in a zoo, where they create the surroundings that would be similar to the surroundings that they would be out in the wild. And as far as the animal knows, especially they've been raised in a zoo, they don't know the difference. Maybe they kind of perceive based on what the surroundings look like, that they're in the wild, but there's only so far they can go, right? And in some cases, we've escaped bondage and gone into captivity. Captivity can look like freedom. Deceptive. Looks like freedom. Oh, sure, baboon, he's swinging on, trees and all this kind of stuff like that, but he's in an enclosement, he's in an encasement. You can only go so far. The fish and shark, they're swimming out of all kinds of water. Stink. It can only go so far. It looks like they're free, but really, they're still trapped. This is how lawlessness works. You really think, hey, I have freedom. And here's the funny thing, y'all. Lawlessness also manifests itself in some of the religious orders of the day. Right? Where here's one great example where I talk about obedience to Torah as legalism. And then I say, well, I have Holy Spirit. So that means I'm free. Okay? Free to do what? Define your freedom. How? Well, I think we said before, it bears repeating, true freedom is governed by law. If there is no law, there is no freedom. If there's nothing governing that freedom, it's not freedom. Law governs freedom. You don't throw away the law and attain freedom. You don't even have a way to define it. You need law to have freedom. You do. You need something to define what freedom actually really looks like. And it's amazing to me that Yaakov, James, as it's more popularly known, talks about Torah and he refers to it as the perfect law of liberty. This is the law of liberty. This is where not only do I define my freedom, this is where I actually maximize my freedom. In obedience to him is where I actually find the full expression, the full reality, the full blessing of my freedom comes in my obedience to his Torah. It doesn't put me in bondage. It doesn't put me in captivity. My own thoughts do. My own ways do. The way of the transgressor, according to the text, is difficult. It's hard. Right? So it makes me grateful for his Torah because his Torah establishes my freedom. Right? And his Torah causes me to actually be able to really live out the fullness of his freedom that he's provided for me through his Torah. I want to read two more passages. 1 John chapter 2. 1 John chapter 2, verse number 18. Sometimes I get the sense in my heart of certain things. I'm not, one of these people that are trying to swindle people in any certain way. But I feel in my heart whether this is reaching you through the social media platforms that we're on right now. We're on 3 of them right now. Whichever one, or whether this is going to be something that you see later on at 4:30 a.m. next Friday morning on the Daily Gospel Network television rankings. I get the sense that there are people, individuals, who are seeing this or will see this, that the Most High has been dealing with your heart and mind concerning the things that are being said. And I want you to take note that this is an indication to you that it's time for you to walk in that reality and into that freedom. That it's really, you've reached a point where you can no longer resist. You know, you said to Shaul, it's hard to kick against the brick. You can't. You can't continue in the same manner, because one thing you have to understand is once you've heard the reality of the truth, you become accountable and responsible for walking into that truth. So whoever that is, I just felt the need to say that. 1 John 2:18. 1 John 2:18. Children, this is the last hour. You have heard that an anti-Messiah is coming, and in fact, many anti-Messiahs have arisen now. True. Which is how we know that this is the last hour. They went out from us, but they weren't part of us. For had they been part of us, they would have remained with us. But you have received the Messiah's anointing from Hakadosh, and you know all this. It is not because you don't know the truth that I've written to you, but because you do know it, and because no lie has its origin in the truth. Goodness gracious. Who is a liar at all, if not the person who denies that Yeshua is the Messiah? The Messiah, not a Messiah, the Messiah. Such a person is an anti-Messiah. He is denying the Father and the Son. Everyone who denies the Son is also without the Father, but the person who acknowledges the Son has the Father as well. I encourage you to read all that all the way down to the end. But he's making it very, very clear that it's the last hour. And although it talks about anti-Messiah coming, he says many anti-Messiahs, many those who have tried to substitute and be in the place of Messiah, many who have been against him, who have already come. The Apostle Yochanan John, he also writes in his epistle, the statement that a lot of times people make in a lot of church services, that, you know, sometimes it stirs people and excites them, but he says, greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. Well, he's talking specifically, he's really talking about the greater one, the true Messiah, right, who is within us, versus the spirit of the anti-Messiah that is in the world. And he speaks in a language that expresses to us that we've already really overcome him. We overcome him. We win over him. We triumph over that spirit, right? And we have to triumph over that spirit, both in the sense of the reality, because I keep realizing that our mind is the true battlefield. And that if we don't win the battle in our minds, we're not going to win the battle. Right? So the apostle makes it clear to us. We have armor, but he makes it clear to us that we also have weapons of warfare that are not carnal. Mighty through the Most High to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations, and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of the Most High, bringing into captivity every thought to the obedient. My Bible says that we make every thought obey the Messiah. That there was a spiritual warfare, and there's a mental exercise, mental thing that is taking place. It's important for us to understand that every thought that comes to our head is not ours. That we cannot take ownership of every thought that comes to our head, because sometimes the thoughts that come to our head are simply satanic suggestions. It's the same trick that he used at the conversation with the house. It's the same trick. It's the same tactic, right? But then we're told through the apostle, we're not ignorant concerning his devices. We know his mannerism and his character and how he comes and how he approaches. And when we understand that sometimes the thoughts that are coming, they're coming from so many different sources. Sometimes it's the fact that we allowed ourselves to be exposed to something that we should not have. It's some suggestion that comes. But when those thoughts come, we have the capability to take the thoughts, not let ourselves run away with the thought. One thing I found out, I went through maybe like a 3-month period. I started experiencing some stuff in my body 2 years ago. And I went through a 3-month period where I was just like, you're talking about like, you ever seen the movie High Anxiety? It was kind of like very, that's the best way I could describe it. Something happened where I felt like I was about to pass out while I was driving down the street. I was having some issues with blood pressure. And it scared me. It frightened me. It frightened me so much until for a little while I wouldn't even drive the car. I wouldn't drive at all. So afraid. And every little pain that hit me, you know, I was thinking, oh my gosh, what is about to happen? It's crazy. That was sometimes where I went to bed at like 5:30, 6 o'clock. Sun's not even down. And I'm trying to lay down because I was too afraid to be awake. I went through that about a 3-month period after that episode. That thing that sat on me, that fear just really sat on me. That's why I learned, you know, you can't allow your mind to just go, because your mind will create a reality for you that doesn't exist. You will be afraid of something that hasn't happened, that probably won't happen. And that fear will be so real. And I realized that then, that every thought that comes to your head, you can't subject yourself to the thought. You gotta, wait a minute. You know, you wouldn't just let anybody come to your house and let them have free reign. So any thought that comes, you gotta, wait a minute, where's this coming from? And if I realize where it came from, then I know what I need to do with it. Right? If it's come from something that's inspired by Holy Spirit through his word, through his word, I hold on to that, embrace it, follow the instruction of what it is. If it comes from something that I've allowed myself to expose to, hey, you know, I repent that and dismiss that from myself. Or if I realize it's a satanic suggestion, I cast down that imagination. I get that thing out of my mind. How do I do that? I go back and refocus my mind on his word, on his Torah, so that I can counteract that thought. You don't have to win this battle in the mind. Means it's why we got to turn something off TV. Some of those things, there's certain things we will not watch. Not even an inkling of it. We got to be careful what we allow ourselves to be entertained by. Entertainment isn't always innocent. It's very suggestive. There's certain things I can't allow myself to be entertained by profanity. I can't do it. I can't allow myself to be entertained by striptease and pornography. I can't allow myself to be entertained by witchcraft. I can't do it. Even the innocent, I can't allow myself, because you can't take that which is profane and make it innocent. I can't allow it. Turn it off. It won't hurt, I promise. Press the button. Push it. Push it. It won't hurt. You can do it. Push it. All right. 2 Timothy chapter 2, and I'm gonna be finished with that. 2 Timothy chapter 2. That we preach today, that people will not endure sound doctrine. They will endure the line at Walmart. They will endure the line at Best Buy. They will endure 3-hour Marvel movies. or hour. They will not endure sound doctrine. What a day. 2 Timothy chapter 2, look at verse 1. Oh, man. Yeah, 2 Timothy chapter 2. Verse number 1. So then, you, my son, be empowered by the grace that comes from the Messiah Yeshua, and the things you heard from me, which are supported by many witnesses, these things commit to faithful people, such as will be competent to teach to others. Also, accept your share in suffering, this grace as a good soldier of the Messiah Yeshua. No soldier on duty gets involved with civilian affairs since he has to please his commanding officer. Also, an athlete can't win a contest unless he competes according to the rules. The farmer who has done the hard work should be the first to receive the share of the harvest. Think about what I'm saying. For the Most High will enable you to understand everything. So he talks to him about the reality that, there are some things that when you make that stand, that you'll suffer. I'm starting to understand that we really have been given a capacity to endure certain things. We've been given a capacity to endure certain suffering. Sometimes we're afraid of suffering. Our westernized, Americanized society has spoiled us to convenience, right? And you'd be surprised how many people are, I just don't know if I can make it without my microwave. Well, we'll figure it out because it's coming. It's coming. Speaking of convenience, your Bible app on your mobile device, they're already doing alterations to it. I know because I've kind of tracked some of them. Deletes, edits, those kind of things. Certain passages you can't even really, there have been certain passages that I've even tried to search. And when I try to search, it's almost like the thing won't even go to find it. It loops into some crazy advertisement for some business or something. It's crazy. Okay? The way they play with the algorithms. Right? But yeah, at some point you'll go for that thing and it won't be there. This find the leather in each paper. At some point, you're gonna take this thing. Why? It's already been, earmarked. It's what's gonna happen. Which is why it becomes important for this thing to really be embedded in your heart. And his Torah really has to be embedded in your heart. And if you really, which is the wisdom of the Father, right? Because he gives us Ruach, right? Who leads us and guides us to all truth and brings back to our remembrance what's been committed. So really, you really need to make sure that you really have Ruach and not just emotion. Because at the end of the day, if all you got to go on is emotion, I'm willing to bet that you'll willingly take a mark. I'm willing to bet that. I believe it. So the truth of the matter is, we've reached a time where chaos has become the order of the day. And there's three things that the Father put in my heart to say that as a Messianic community in Mishpachah, we need to really embrace and make the decision to do, quality decision to do. Number one, keep the faith. What did he say to him? Endure hardness as a good soldier. And watch this, when I say keep the faith is not the stuff that we've been told it is. The faith is the body of truth. It's the same thing that Yehuda said, right? Earnestly contend for the faith. Same thing as Shaul said when he says, I kept the faith, right? The body of truth that we've been given, whereby we may live. So keep the faith and to withstand. Number 2, declare your allegiance. Do not be afraid to declare your allegiance. Everybody declares their allegiance. Everybody declares what they're proud of and blah, 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 and don't mind telling people what they stand for, even if it's wrong. So I'm not going to deny him for popularity. I'm not going to deny him just to have the status quo. I declare my allegiance. My allegiance is to the Most High, to his kingdom, to his Mashiach. That's it. I have no allegiance to any religious affiliation. My allegiance is only to the Most High, to his Torah, to Hamashiach. That's it. I have no other allegiance. By default, my trust is also in him. And then number 3, he says, whatever you do, stay connected. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 25. Don't forsake the assembling of yourself together as a man of some is. And as you see the day approaching, is something that we really should embrace the reality of much more. Right? It's something that we really should do because there's something that has been established in being connected in community. There's a strength that comes, right? You don't want to be like the sheep that wanders off and allows themselves to be attacked by there's no protection. Shepherded, all kinds of different things, right? Leaving themselves susceptible. There's something to be said about, I'm talking about like the just religious, I went to church because I go to church, because it's going to church is what I'm supposed to do, and there's nothing out of it. I'm talking about the sense of community, which means you can establish that without building. Can. Now, notwithstanding, coming to the building, coming to the assembly, coming to the place has been set aside and dedicated for the worship of the Most High. That is not important. I'm not saying that. But there are some people who are even to the point of being, some of the stuff that happened during the height of what we know as the pandemic really brought people to a place of sort of distance and, where they no longer see the importance of the community. And they decided, no, I don't need that. I'll just watch it online, right? But the Father made us to be in community. He made us to be in fellowship with one another, right? There's something that happens with us as we assemble. There's a strength, there's an encouragement. There are so many different things that come from that. It has its purpose. It's not just for the sake of raising money and achieving and attaining social status. It is about what the Father has established. No man is an island unto himself. Right? We've all been put together in a community. So those 3 things: keep the faith to withstand, declare your allegiance, and remain connected through community. It's important, right? Keep one another encouraged. Lord, thank you so much for your word, for your truth. Thank you that your word is established in the heavens. Let it be established in our hearts. Thank you that it will take root and produce fruit in Yeshua's name. And we thank you that you do bless us and keep us. You make your face to shine upon us. You're gracious to us. You have given to us your shalom. Put your name upon us, your people, and you have blessed us. We go in your care and your comfort. In Yeshua's name, amen. Love your family. Yeah.